I spent 32 years building a life for my son. I paid for his college education, every penny of that $180,000 tuition. I bought him his first car when he graduated, helped with the down payment on his house when he got married. Last month, when I called to ask if I could move in after your mother passed, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Dad, you're becoming a burden we can't handle." That's when I realized I had raised a stranger. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please like, comment, and subscribe. I spent 32 years building a life for my son. I paid for his college education, every penny of that $180,000 tuition. I bought him his first car when he graduated, helped with the down payment on his house when he got married. Last month, when I called to ask if I could move in after your mother passed, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Dad, you're becoming a burden we can't handle." That's when I realized I had raised a stranger. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your stories matter, and so do mine. It's been 3 weeks since Margaret's funeral. 3 weeks since I've heard another person's voice in this house that suddenly feels too big, too quiet, too full of memories that echo in every empty room. The silence isn't peaceful, it's suffocating. It wraps around you like a wet blanket, heavy and cold, making every breath feel like work. I'm sitting in the kitchen where Margaret used to make her morning coffee, still using her favorite mug because washing it feels like letting go of one more piece of her. The house settles around me with creaks and sighs, sounds I never noticed when she was here to fill the spaces with her humming, her footsteps, her gentle complaints about the neighbor's dog. The heating bill came yesterday, $347 foo, or a month when I barely left the bedroom. The gutters need cleaning. I can see the leaves building up from where I sit, brown and soggy from last week's rain. Margaret always handled the scheduling, the phone calls to contractors, the endless maintenance that keeps a 35-year-old house from falling apart around you. I don't know how to do this alone. I don't know how to be alone. The phone sits on the counter, the same avocado green rotary phone Margaret refused to replace because it still works perfectly fine. I've been staring at it for an hour, rehearsing the conversation I need to have with David, my son, the boy who used to climb into this very chair next to me every Saturday morning, still in his pajamas, waiting for me to make pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. The words I've practiced sound reasonable in my head. "David, I've been thinking, this house is getting to be too much for me. Maybe I could stay with you and Sarah for a while, just until I figure things out. I could help with Emma, maybe watch her after school. I could help around the house, with groceries, whatever you need." I dial his number. The phone rings 3 times before he picks up, and I can hear the television in the background. Some cartoon Emma must be watching. "Hey, Dad, how are you holding up?" There's something in his voice already, a careful distance like he's bracing for something he doesn't want to hear. But I push forward with my rehearsed words. "I'm managing, son. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. This house, well, it's a lot for one person. I was wondering if maybe I could—" "Dad, Sarah and I have been talking about this." His interruption stops me cold. They've been talking. About me. About what to do with me. "We think you need professional care. We can't take on that responsibility." Responsibility. The word hits me like a physical blow, sharp and precise, finding the exact spot where my heart used to feel full watching my son grow up. Responsibility. Not love, not family, not the natural order of life where children care for the parents who cared for them. Responsibility. Like I'm a broken appliance that needs to be disposed of properly. "David, I don't need professional care. I just need—" "Dad, you're 67 years old. Mom handled everything for you guys. The bills, the appointments, the house stuff. You can't even remember to take your blood pressure medication without her reminding you." He's not wrong about the medication, or about Margaret handling the details. But the way he says it, like I'm already incompetent, like I'm already gone, it makes me feel smaller than I've ever felt in my life. "I could learn," I say, and my voice sounds pathetic even to me. "It's not about learning, Dad. It's about being realistic. Sarah and I have our own lives, our own routines. Emma's got school and activities. We can't just upend everything." Our conversation continues for another 10 minutes, but I stop listening after "we can't just upend everything," because what he means is, you're not worth upending everything for. You're not worth the inconvenience. After I hang up, I sit in the kitchen for a long time, watching the afternoon light fade through Margaret's lace curtains. I remember when David was 7 and broke his arm falling off his bike. He ran to me crying, not to Margaret, not to anyone else, to me. I held him in this same kitchen while we waited for Margaret to get home from grocery shopping, and he kept saying, "Daddy, fix it, please fix it." I couldn't fix his broken arm, but I could hold him while it hurt. I could promise him it would get better, that I would make sure he got the help he needed. I could be the safe place he ran to when the world hurt him. When did I stop being his safe place? When did I become the thing he needs to be protected from? I get up and walk to the living room, where Margaret kept all our family photos arranged on the mantel above the fireplace. There's David at 8, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a fish we caught on our camping trip to Lake George. There's his high school graduation, me beaming with pride in my good suit, my arm around his shoulders, his college graduation, his wedding day, the day Emma was born, all of us smiling, all of us together, all of us family. When did that change? When did I stop being the father in these pictures and become a responsibility to be managed? I pick up the photo from David's college graduation. I remember that day so clearly. The pride I felt watching him walk across that stage, knowing that every overtime shift I'd worked, every sacrifice Margaret and I had made, had led to this moment. I thought we were investing in our son's future. I thought we were building a relationship that would last forever. But looking at his face in the photo now, I see something I missed then. He's not looking at me with gratitude or love. He's looking at me with the polite acknowledgement you give someone who's done their job and can now be dismissed. The light outside is almost gone now. Soon it will be dark, and I'll eat dinner alone again, watching the news alone again, going to bed in a house that feels more like a tomb than a home. Tomorrow, I think, I'll call David again. Maybe I didn't explain it right. Maybe if I tell him I'm not asking for much, just a place to belong, just a chance to be useful again, maybe he'll understand. But deep down, in the place where hope goes to die, I already know what his answer will be. I'm not his father anymore. I'm his responsibility. And responsibilities are things you handle, not things you love. The next morning, I drive to David's house without calling first. I know I shouldn't. Margaret always taught me to call ahead, to respect people's time and space. But this is my son. This is family. Surely showing up at your own son's house isn't the same as bothering a stranger. The drive takes 22 minutes through neighborhoods that used to be farmland when Margaret and I first moved here. Now they're subdivisions with names like Heritage Oaks and Whispering Pines. Places where young families like David and Sarah build their lives behind privacy fences and automatic sprinkler systems. David's house sits at the end of a cul-de-sac, a 2-story colonial with a 3-car garage and landscaping that looks like it came from a magazine. I remember writing the check for his down payment 5 years ago, $75,000, that represented nearly everything Margaret and I had saved for our own retirement. But we were happy to do it, thrilled even. This was our son building a life, creating a home where our granddaughter would grow up safe and loved. I park on the street and walk up the driveway, noticing how perfect everything looks. The lawn is professionally maintained, the flower beds are mulched and weeded, the windows sparkle in the morning sun. This is the life we helped him build. This is what our sacrifices created. As I approach the front door, I hear voices through the kitchen window. David and Sarah are talking, and something about their tone makes me stop before ringing the doorbell. They're discussing something serious, something private. "We can't keep putting this off," Sarah is saying. Her voice is clipped, efficient. "He's going to keep calling, keep showing up. We need a plan." "I know," David replies, and I can hear the frustration in his voice. "But it's not that simple. He's not going to just accept it. The social worker I talked to said there are options. Memory care facilities, assisted living, places that specialize in this kind of transition." My blood runs cold. Memory care? I don't have memory problems. I'm not sick. I'm just lonely. "What about his finances?" Sarah continues. "We need to understand what we're working with. The house, his savings, the life insurance money from your mom. If we're going to make decisions, we need to know the numbers." Numbers. They're talking about me like I'm a math problem to be solved. "I've been thinking about power of attorney," David says. "Maybe Dr. Peterson could do an assessment, declare him incompetent. Then we could make the decisions without having to argue with him about every little thing." The words hit me like a slap. Incompetent. My own son wants to have me declared incompetent so he can make decisions about my life without my input. I stand there in his perfect driveway, listening to my son and daughter-in-law discuss my future like I'm not a person with thoughts and feelings and rights, but an obstacle to be managed. They're not worried about my happiness or my dignity. They're worried about the inconvenience I might cause them. We have our own lives, Sarah says, and there's something final in her tone. We can't be expected to sacrifice everything just because he's lonely. Emma has school, activities. I have my job. You have your job. We can't just drop everything to babysit your father. Babysit. That's what I've become in their eyes, a troublesome child who needs constant supervision. I should leave. I should get back in my car and drive away and never speak of what I've heard, but I'm frozen, horrified and fascinated by this glimpse into how they really see me. Maybe we should look into that place in Millbrook, David continues. Sunset Manor. It's expensive, but if we sell his house, there should be enough to cover it for a few years. They're already planning to sell my house. The house where I raised David, where Margaret and I built our life together, where every room holds 35 years of memories. They're planning to sell it like it's just another asset to be liquidated. The front door opens, and David appears, his face cycling rapidly through surprise, annoyance, and what might be guilt. Dad, what are you doing here? I wanted to talk to you, I say, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. I thought maybe we could discuss. You can't just show up like this, he interrupts, stepping out onto the porch and pulling the door closed behind him. We have routines, schedules. You need to call first. Routines, schedules. The careful architecture of a life that has no room for inconvenient fathers. David, I'm not asking for much. I could help with groceries, watch Emma after school, do projects around the house. I could be useful. He sighs, the way you sigh when dealing with someone who just doesn't understand how the world works. Dad, we appreciate the offer, we really do. But we have everything handled. Emma's in after-school care. We have a lawn service, a cleaning lady. We don't need... He stops himself, but I know what he was going to say. We don't need you. I could just stay for a few weeks. I try again, hearing the desperation in my own voice and hating it. Just until I figure out what comes next. I wouldn't be any trouble. Sarah appears in the doorway behind David, and I can see in her face that she heard every word of our conversation through the kitchen window. She knows that I know what they were discussing. Robert, she says, her voice carefully neutral, we understand this is a difficult time for you, but David and I have talked about this extensively. We think the best thing for everyone would be if you considered some of the wonderful senior communities in the area, places where you can make friends, have activities, get the support you need. Support, such a clean word for what they really mean, supervision. We've done some research, David adds, and there's a note of pride in his voice, like he's pleased with his thoroughness. There are some really nice places. Sunset Manor has a great reputation. They have activities, meal programs, transportation, everything you could need, everything except family, everything except the feeling that you matter to the people you love most. We've also talked to Dr. Peterson about getting you a full evaluation, Sarah continues. Just to make sure we understand your needs, your capabilities. It's important to be realistic about these things. Realistic. Code for, we've already decided you're incompetent, we just need a doctor to make it official. I look at my son, whom I taught to ride a bike and throw a baseball, whose scraped knees I kissed, whose college education I paid for with money I earned on my hands and knees laying tile in strangers' kitchens, and I see a stranger. I see someone who has calculated the cost of love and decided I'm too expensive. I see, I say finally. You've thought of everything. Dad, don't be like that. We're trying to help you. We're trying to do what's best for everyone. Everyone, meaning them. I walk back to my car with as much dignity as I can manage, feeling their eyes on my back. As I drive away, I catch a glimpse of them in my rearview mirror, standing in their perfect doorway of their perfect house that I helped them buy, watching me leave with what looks like relief. That evening, I sit in my kitchen with a stack of papers spread across Margaret's old oak table. Bank statements, insurance policies, investment accounts, the financial record of a life spent working and saving and sacrificing for people who now see me as a problem to be solved. I think about David as a little boy, how he used to crawl into bed with Margaret and me during thunderstorms, how small and warm he felt pressed against my side. I would tell him he was safe, that I would always protect him, always take care of him. I never thought I would need him to do the same for me, but I never thought he would see that need as a burden he couldn't carry. Tomorrow, I decide, I'll start making some calls. Not to the places David and Sarah researched, but to a lawyer. Because if my son wants to treat me like a problem to be managed, maybe it's time I started managing a few problems of my own. After all, they're so concerned about my finances, my assets, my capabilities. Maybe it's time they learned just how capable I really am. I spend the rest of the week going through every piece of paper Margaret kept filed away in what she called her important drawer. The bottom drawer of the oak desk in our bedroom where she stored birth certificates, insurance policies, and every major financial document from our marriage. The numbers tell a story I haven't looked at all at once before. A story of choices made and dreams deferred, all for the sake of a son who now sees me as a burden too heavy to carry. College tuition, $180,000. I remember writing those checks, semester after semester, while Margaret and I ate pasta and ground beef for dinner most nights to keep our grocery bill under $50 a week. David wanted to go to State University, which would have cost us maybe $40,000 total, but I pushed for the private college, the prestigious one, where he could get the kind of education I never had. He'll have opportunities we never dreamed of, I told Margaret when she worried about the money. He'll never have to work construction, never have to come home with his back aching and his hands bleeding. So I worked double shifts, overtime whenever I could. Get it? Weekends laying tile in rich people's bathrooms, while my own bathroom had loose tiles and a dripping faucet I never found time to fix. I missed David's baseball games, school plays, parent-teacher conferences. Margaret went to most of those alone while I worked to pay for his future. His first car, $35,000, not a used Honda like I suggested, but a new Jeep Grand Cherokee because David needs reliable transportation for job interviews. Never mind that my truck was 15 years old and held together with hope and duct tape. David needed reliable transportation. The down payment on his house, $75,000. Nearly every penny Margaret and I had managed to save for retirement, handed over so David and Sarah could avoid PMI and get a better interest rate. We told ourselves we'd build our savings back up. We had time. But time ran out for Margaret before we could save another penny. The wedding, $43,000. Sarah wanted what she called a fairy tale wedding, and somehow I became the fairy godfather expected to make it all come true. The venue, the flowers, the open bar, the band, all of it paid for by a man who got married in a simple ceremony at the courthouse, because that's all we could afford. I remember David pulling me aside the week before the wedding, his eyes bright with excitement and gratitude. "Dad, I don't know how to thank you for all this. You and Mom have given us everything." Everything. Yes, we had, and at the time it felt like the most natural thing in the world. This is what parents do, I told myself. We sacrifice for our children. We give them everything so they can have better lives than we did. But sitting here now, surrounded by the evidence of 32 years of sacrifice, I'm starting to understand something that makes my chest tight with a pain that has nothing to do with my heart medication. David doesn't see these numbers as gifts. He sees them as payments he was owed. The college education, the car, the house, the wedding, none of it was generosity in his mind. It was just what good parents were supposed to do, and now that the giving is supposed to flow in the other direction, now that I need something from him, I've become inconvenient. I pull out a yellow legal pad and start making calculations. If Margaret and I had kept that money, invested it conservatively, lived in a smaller house, taken some of those vacations we kept postponing, where would we be now? The numbers are staggering. With compound interest over the years, we would have had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. Enough to pay for the kind of care David thinks I need without it being a burden on anyone. Enough to maintain our independence, our dignity. Instead, we gave it all away to a son who now wants to put me, somewhere where I won't be his responsibility. But the money isn't even the worst part. The worst part is the time. I flip through Margaret's careful calendar entries from years past. David's little league games marked in her neat handwriting, most with just her initial, M, indicating she went alone because I was working. School concerts, science fairs, birthday parties. M, M, M. I miss David's childhood to pay for David's future. And Margaret, my sweet Margaret, who never complained, never made me feel guilty, she experienced most of the joy of raising our son alone while I worked to make sure he had every advantage. The vacation to Europe we talked about taking for our 25th anniversary, postponed because David's senior year expenses were higher than expected. We'll go next year, we said. Next year became the year after, became eventually, became never. Margaret's dream of remodeling the kitchen. After David graduates, she said. After David graduates became after David gets married, became after David buys his house. She died with the same avocado appliances and laminate countertops she'd been looking at for 30 years. Years, because every time we had money for improvements, David needed something. I think about her father, Margaret's dad, who lived with us for the last 2 years of his life. I was not kind to him. I was not patient. I saw him as an inconvenience, an unwelcome intrusion into our lives. The way he shuffled when he walked, the way he repeated stories, the way he needed help with things that used to come easily to him, all of it irritated me. David barely visited during those 2 years. When he did come by, he was polite but distant with his grandfather, the same way you might be polite to a stranger at a bus stop. Margaret tried to encourage more visits, more connection. "He's your grandfather," she would tell David. "These are precious years." But David was busy building his career, his relationship with Sarah, his own life. He didn't have time for an old man's stories and needs. Now I understand the terrible symmetry of it all. David learned from watching me. He learned that elderly parents are burdens to be endured, not treasures to be cherished. He learned that love has limits, that inconvenience excuses cruelty, that family obligations can be outsourced to professionals. I taught him that, not with words, but with actions, with impatience, with the clear message that his grandfather was something to be tolerated, not celebrated. And now I am the grandfather. Now I am the inconvenience. Now I am the burden that needs to be managed rather than the father who needs to be loved. The circle is complete. The lesson I taught has been learned perfectly. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. Understanding doesn't make the loneliness any more bearable. Understanding doesn't make the rejection any less devastating. I gather all the papers back into Margaret's important drawer and close it carefully. Tomorrow, I think, I'll call Tom Bradley, the lawyer who handled our will and Margaret's estate. Maybe it's time to have a different kind of conversation about money, about what we leave behind and who deserves to receive it. After all, David is so concerned about managing my assets. Maybe it's time he learned that some assets don't need managing, they need earning. And respect, I'm beginning to understand, is something that has to be earned every single day. Even from your own children, especially from your own children. Tom Bradley's law office hasn't changed in the 23 years he's been handling Margaret's and my legal affairs. Same dark wood paneling, same leather chairs that wheeze softly when you sit in them, same smell of old books and strong coffee. Tom himself has aged, of course. His hair is completely white now, and he moves more slowly than he used to. But his eyes are still sharp, still kind. He handled our wills when David was born, updated them when we bought the house, guided us through the paperwork when Margaret's father moved in with us. When Margaret got sick, Tom walked us through power of attorney documents and living wills with the same gentle patience he's shown for decades. He was at her funeral, one of the faces in the crowd that made me feel less alone. "Robert," he says now, settling into his chair across from me. "I was sorry I didn't get to talk to you more at Margaret's service. How are you holding up?" The question is simple, but the way Tom asks it, with genuine concern, with the time to actually listen to the answer, makes my throat tight. When was the last time someone asked how I was doing and actually wanted to know? "I'm managing," I say, which is my standard answer, but Tom just waits, the way good lawyers do, and somehow the truth starts spilling out. I tell him about the silence in the house, about the overwhelming maintenance and bills, about my call to David and the cold rejection that followed. I tell him about driving to David's house and overhearing the conversation about memory care and power of attorney and selling my home like it's just an other asset to be liquidated. Tom listens without interrupting, occasionally making notes on the yellow legal pad he's kept on his desk since I've known him. When I finally run out of words, he leans back in his chair and studies me with those sharp, kind eyes. "So you're here to update your will," he says. "Make some changes after Margaret's passing." "Yes, I think so." I don't know what I'm here for exactly. Tom nods. Well, let's start with the basic question. Robert, who are you leaving all this to? The question seems so obvious that I almost laugh. David, of course. He's my son. He's all I have left. Tom doesn't respond immediately. He taps his pen against his legal pad, a rhythm I remember from our previous meetings. It usually means he's thinking about how to say something I might not want to hear. You sure about that? He finally asks. Because from what you're telling me about how he's treating you, the question hangs in the air like smoke, spreading slowly until it fills the entire room. Am I sure? A week ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Family takes care of family. Children inherit from their parents. That's how the world works. But now... Tom, what are you getting at? He leans forward, his voice gentle but direct. Robert, I've been practicing law for 43 years. I've seen a lot of families go through this kind of thing, and I've learned something that might surprise you. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. People who see their parents as burdens rarely see inheritances as gifts. They see them as payments owed, compensation for having to deal with you while you're alive. The words hit me like a physical blow. Payments owed, compensation for dealing with me. He's already spending your money in his head, Robert. Question is, do you want to reward that? I sit in silence for a long moment, processing what Tom has just suggested. David, my son, the boy I raised and sacrificed for, sees my death as payday. My inheritance isn't a final gift from a loving father. It's a consolation prize for having to tolerate me while I'm still breathing. But he's my son, I say weakly. Yes, he is. And sons are supposed to honor their fathers, not manage them like problems to be solved. Tom opens a file drawer and pulls out a thick folder. Let me show you something, Robert. These are cases I've handled over the years. Children who treated their parents like inconveniences, then showed up at will readings expecting to cash in. He flips through several documents, pointing to specific passages. This woman, Eleanor Patterson, her daughter put her in a nursing home against her will, never visited, treated her like a burden for 8 years. Daughter showed up to the will, reading expecting a windfall. Eleanor left everything to the nurses who actually cared for her in her final years. He turns to another document. Frank Morrison. His son couldn't be bothered to visit, couldn't be bothered to call, but he had very specific ideas about what should happen to Frank's house, his savings, his possessions. Frank left it all to a charity that helps elderly people stay in their homes with dignity. Tom closes the folder and looks at me directly. The question isn't whether David is your son, Robert. The question is whether he's acting like one. And if he's not, why should he be rewarded for that? I drive home in a daze, Tom's words echoing in my mind. He's already spending your money in his head. Is that true? When David talks about my assets and my finances, is he already planning how to spend what I'll leave behind? That evening, I find myself in the bedroom Margaret and I shared for 35 years, looking through her jewelry box. Her wedding ring still sits in the small velvet compartment where she kept her most precious pieces. I pick it up, turning it in the light from the bedside lamp. 57 years she wore this ring. 57 years of marriage, of partnership, of love. What will happen to this ring when I'm gone? Will David give it to Sarah, who barely knew Margaret and certainly didn't love her? Will it end up in a drawer somewhere, forgotten? Or worse, will they sell it, turn it into cash to add to whatever windfall they're expecting? I imagine David and Sarah going through this house after my funeral, pricing everything like estate sale shoppers. Margaret's china that belonged to her grandmother, reduced to $1 amount. The rocking chair where she nursed David as a baby, evaluated for its resale value. The photo albums full of family memories, probably thrown away because they have no monetary worth. The thought makes me physically ill. I walk through the house, seeing it now through the eyes of people who view it as an asset to be liquidated rather than a home filled with love and memories. The kitchen where Margaret taught David to make cookies, where we celebrated his birthday every year, where we sat and talked about our dreams, just square footage to be measured and appraised. The living room where David took his first steps, where we opened Christmas presents for 32 years, where we watched him graduate from high school on a grainy VHS recording, just another room to be emptied and staged for sale. Tom's question echoes in my mind. Do you want to reward that? Do I want to reward a son who sees my death as a business transaction? Do I want to leave everything I've worked for to someone who couldn't even offer me a place to stay when I needed it most? For the first time in my life, the answer isn't automatic. For the first time, I'm not sure David deserves what I want, is planning to give him. Maybe it's time to start thinking about what he's actually earned. And maybe it's time to start thinking about who else in this world might be more deserving of what Margaret and I built together. People who see elderly parents as treasures, not burdens. People who understand that love isn't a business transaction. People who know the difference between inheritance and payment owed. Tomorrow, I think, I'll call Tom Bradley again. This time I'll have some very different instructions about my will. After all, if David wants to treat me like a stranger, maybe it's time I started leaving my money to people who actually act like family. The phone rings on Thursday evening while I'm heating up a can of soup for dinner. I almost don't answer it. These days, most calls are either telemarketers or medical appointment reminders, and I'm not in the mood for either. But something makes me pick up on the fourth ring. Grandpa? The voice is small, uncertain, thick with tears. Emma? Sweetheart, what's wrong? Emma is my 8-year-old granddaughter, David's daughter, the bright spot in a family that seems to have forgotten how to love each other. She has Margaret's eyes and David's stubborn chin, and when she smiles, I can see the boy her father used to be before he became the cold stranger who wants to warehouse me in a nursing home. Grandpa, I heard Mommy and Daddy talking. She's whispering, and I can picture her hiding in her bedroom, probably under the covers with her pink princess phone. They were talking about your house and about putting you somewhere. Are you going away, Grandpa? My heart breaks a little more. Not just for me, but for this innocent child who's caught in the middle of adult cruelty she doesn't understand. I don't know yet, sweetheart. Why don't you tell me what you heard? Through her whispered words and occasional sniffles, I pieced together the conversation she overheard. David and Sarah discussing the dad situation in more detail than I caught through their kitchen window. They've apparently made appointments to tour facilities, contacted a social worker about transition services, and spoken to a financial advisor about managing his assets during the spend-down period. Spend-down period. They're planning to use my money to pay for the care they won't provide, then inherit whatever's left. It's all very tidy, very efficient. They keep talking about power of attorney, Emma continues, pronouncing the words carefully like she's been practicing them. And they said something about Grandma's jewelry and whether they should sell it or keep it. Margaret's jewelry. They're already dividing up her possessions, the treasures she wore and loved and planned to pass down to Emma when she was old enough to appreciate them. Grandpa, why can't you just live with us? My friend Maya's grandpa lives with them, and he's so much fun. He helps her with her homework and teaches her card games and makes her special pancakes on Saturday mornings. The innocence of the question destroys me. In Emma's 8-year-old world, love is simple. If you care about someone, you want them close. If someone is sad and lonely, you invite them into your home and your life. She can't understand why adults complicate something so basic. Maya's mommy says having Grandpa Joe there makes their family stronger. He tells stories about the old days and helps with dinner and plays games with Maya when her parents are busy. Why don't Mommy and Daddy want that? I don't know how to answer her. How do you explain to a child that her parents see love as a burden rather than a gift? How do you tell her that some adults measure family obligations on a spreadsheet rather than in their hearts? Tell me about Maya's grandpa, I say instead. For the next 15 minutes, Emma chatters about Grandpa Joe, who apparently is everything David thinks I'm not capable of being. He walks Maya to school sometimes. And maybe it's time to start thinking about who else in this world might be more deserving of what Margaret and I built together. People who see elderly parents as treasures, not burdens. People who understand that love isn't a business transaction. People who know the difference between inheritance and payment owed. Tomorrow, I think, I'll call Tom Bradley again. This time I'll have some very different instructions about my will. After all, if David wants to treat me like a stranger, maybe it's time I started leaving my money to people who actually act like family. The phone rings on Thursday evening while I'm heating up a can of soup for dinner. I almost don't answer it. These days, most calls are either telemarketers or medical appointment reminders, and I'm not in the mood for either. But something makes me pick up on the fourth ring. Grandpa? The voice is small, uncertain, thick with tears. Emma? Sweetheart, what's wrong? Emma is my 8-year-old granddaughter, David's daughter, the bright spot in a family that seems to have forgotten how to love each other. She has Margaret's eyes and David's stubborn chin, and when she smiles, I can see the boy her father used to be before he became the cold stranger who wants to warehouse me in a nursing home. Grandpa, I heard Mommy and Daddy talking. She's whispering, and I can picture her hiding in her bedroom, probably under the covers with her pink princess phone. They were talking about your house and about putting you somewhere. Are you going away, Grandpa? My heart breaks a little more. Not just for me, but for this innocent child who's caught in the middle of adult cruelty she doesn't understand. I don't know yet, sweetheart. Why don't you tell me what you heard? Through her whispered words and occasional sniffles, I pieced together the conversation she overheard. David and Sarah discussing the dad situation in more detail than I caught through their kitchen window. They've apparently made appointments to tour facilities, contacted a social worker about transition services, and spoken to a financial advisor about managing his assets during the spend-down period. Spend-down period. They're planning to use my money to pay for the care they won't provide, then inherit whatever's left. It's all very tidy, very efficient. They keep talking about power of attorney, Emma continues, pronouncing the words carefully like she's been practicing them. And they said something about Grandma's jewelry and whether they should sell it or keep it. Margaret's jewelry. They're already dividing up her possessions, the treasures she wore and loved and planned to pass down to Emma when she was old enough to appreciate them. Grandpa, why can't you just live with us? My friend Maya's grandpa lives with them, and he's so much fun. He helps her with her homework and teaches her card games and makes her special pancakes on Saturday mornings. The innocence of the question destroys me. In Emma's 8-year-old world, love is simple. If you care about someone, you want them close. If someone is sad and lonely, you invite them into your home and your life. She can't understand why adults complicate something so basic. Maya's mommy says having Grandpa Joe there makes their family stronger. He tells stories about the old days and helps with dinner and plays games with Maya when her parents are busy. Why don't Mommy and Daddy want that? I don't know how to answer her. How do you explain to a child that her parents see love as a burden rather than a gift? How do you tell her that some adults measure family obligations on a spreadsheet rather than in their hearts? Tell me about Maya's grandpa, I say instead. For the next 15 minutes, Emma chatters about Grandpa Joe, who apparently is everything David thinks I'm not capable of being. He walks Maya to school sometimes, helps her with math homework, teaches her to garden, tells her stories about when her daddy was little. He goes to her school plays and soccer games, babysits when her parents need date nights, makes her feel special and loved and important. Everything I want to do. Everything I've offered to do. Everything David and Sarah have decided I'm too much of a burden to provide. Grandpa Joe makes Maya feel like the most important kid in the world, Emma says. I wish you could do that for me. I wish I could too, sweetheart. Daddy used to tell me stories about when he was little, about how you taught him to fish and took him camping and built him a tree house in the backyard. He said you were the best daddy in the whole world. What happened, Grandpa? Why doesn't he want you to do those things for me? What happened? I got old. I became inconvenient. I started needing instead of giving. And David learned somewhere along the way that family relationships are supposed to be transactional, that love should flow only one direction, from parents to children, never the other way around. Emma, do you think your daddy still loves me? She's quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness only children can bring to such things. I think he does, but he's scared. Scared of what? I don't know. But sometimes when Mommy talks about you, Daddy gets this look on his face like he's gonna cry, but he doesn't want anyone to see. And sometimes I catch him looking at the pictures of you and him when he was little, and he looks sad. Maybe there's still hope. Maybe underneath all the cold calculation and practical considerations, there's still some part of my son that remembers what we used to mean to each other. Grandpa, can I ask you something? Anything, sweetheart. Will you teach me to fish like you taught Daddy before they make you go away? Leaky. The question hits me like a truck. This beautiful little girl, caught between parents who see her grandfather as a problem and a grandfather who's being systematically erased from her life, just wants to learn to fish. She wants the same connection with me that her father had, the same memories, the same love. And she's asking for it like she's running out of time. Of course I will, Emma, I promise. When? When? David and Sarah have made it clear I'm not welcome in their home, not welcome in their lives. They're planning my future without consulting me, moving me toward institutional care like I'm a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. But this is my granddaughter. This is the future of our family, the next generation, the child who will remember how her family treated each other when she becomes an adult herself. This Saturday, I hear myself saying, I'll pick you up Saturday morning and we'll go to Miller's Pond. I'll teach you everything your daddy learned when he was your age. Really? The joy in her voice is infectious. You promise? I promise. But Emma, this has to be our secret for now, okay? Just until I can talk to your mommy and daddy about it. She agrees eagerly, and we spend another few minutes planning our fishing trip. What time I'll pick her up, what she should wear, what snacks we'll bring. The conversation feels like a lifeline, a connection to something pure and uncomplicated in a world that's become cruel and complex. After we hang up, I sit in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about what Emma told me. David gets a look on his face like he's going to cry. He looks at old pictures and seems sad. Maybe Sarah is the one driving this decision. Maybe David is going along with it because it's easier than fighting, but maybe his heart isn't really in it. Or maybe I'm just desperate enough to see hope where none exists. Either way, I have a promise to keep to my granddaughter. This Saturday, I'm going to teach her to fish. I'm going to give her the same gift I gave her father 30 years ago. The knowledge that she is loved unconditionally, that she matters, that she has a grandfather who sees her as a treasure rather than a burden. And maybe, just maybe, when David finds out about our fishing trip, he'll remember what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that kind of love. Maybe he'll remember who he used to be and who I used to be to him. Maybe it's not too late for all of us. But even if it is too late for David and me, it's not too late for Emma and me. She deserves to know her grandfather. She deserves to have someone in her life who thinks she's the most important kid in the world. If that someone can't be her parents, then by God, it's going to be me, for as long as they let me. Saturday morning arrives with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes everything feel possible. I pick up Emma at 7:30, before David and Sarah are fully awake, and we drive to Miller's Pond in comfortable silence. She chattering about school and friends, while I remember the last time I made this drive with a child who carried my DNA and my hopes. Miller's Pond is exactly as I remember it, a small, quiet lake surrounded by oak trees that are just starting to turn gold and red. The same wooden dock where I taught David to cast a line, the same fallen log where we sat and talked about everything and nothing while we waited for fish to bite. Emma is a natural. She listens carefully to my instructions about baiting the hook, about the gentle motion needed for casting, about the patience required for fishing. Within an hour, she's caught 2 small bluegills, and her face glows with pride and accomplishment. Grandpa, did my daddy catch fish when he was little? He sure did. His first fish wad is right over there, near those cattails. He was so excited he nearly fell off the dock trying to reel it in. She giggles, trying to imagine her serious, business-like father as an excited little boy. I tell her more stories about the camping trips David and I used to take, about teaching him to identify different types of birds, about the time he tried to catch a fish with his bare hands and ended up soaking wet and empty-handed. You really love my daddy, don't you, Grandpa? The question is simple, but the answer is complicated. Do I love the man David has become, or do I love the memory of the boy he used to be? I love him very much, Emma. Sometimes when people grow up, they forget how to show love the way they did when they were children. But the love is still there. Like buried treasure? Exactly like buried treasure. We fish until noon, then share the sandwiches and cookies I packed for our lunch. Emma talks about school, about her friends, about the book she's reading about a girl who solves mysteries with her dog. She's smart and funny and kind, everything I hoped she would be, everything her grandmother would have adored. On the drive home, she falls asleep in the passenger seat, her fishing rod carefully secured in the back, her 2 small fish in the cooler she insisted we bring so she could show her parents her catch. When I pull into David's driveway, both he and Sarah are waiting on the front porch, their faces dark with anger. Where the hell have you been? David demands before I've even turned off the engine. Emma wakes up, confused by her father's harsh tone. Daddy, Grandpa taught me to fish. Look, I caught 2. But David isn't interested in her fish. Emma, go inside. Your mother and I need to talk to Grandpa. But Daddy, I want to show you. Inside, now. Emma's face crumbles. She looks at me with confusion and hurt, not understanding why he or her father is angry about something that made her so happy. I give her what I hope is a reassuring smile. Go on, sweetheart. Show your mom the fish. I'll talk to your daddy. After Emma reluctantly goes inside, David turns his full fury on me. What the hell is wrong with you? Taking Emma without permission, disappearing for 5 hours without telling us where you were going. Sarah was ready to call the police. She's my granddaughter. I took her fishing. You took her without asking. You can't just show up and take someone else's child wherever you want to go. Someone else's child. Not our granddaughter, not family. Someone else's child. David, I'm her grandfather. I taught you to fish at Miller's Pond when you were her age. You thought wrong. Things are different now. There are custody laws, safety concerns. You can't just operate like it's 1985. Sarah appears in the doorway, her face flushed with anger and something that might be fear. Robert, what if something had happened? What if Emma had gotten hurt? We had no idea where you were. We called the police, the hospitals. Nothing happened. We went fishing. She had a wonderful time. That's not the point, David snaps. The point is that you're showing exactly the kind of judgment problems we've been worried about. Taking a child without permission, disappearing for hours. This is exactly why you need supervised care. Supervised care. This perfect morning with my granddaughter, this gift of connection and love and memory making, has become evidence of my incompetence. I was going to call, I say weakly. When? After you'd already taken her? That's not how this works, Dad. You don't get to make unilateral decisions about our daughter. Our daughter, not my granddaughter, their daughter. I'm sorry, I say, and I mean it. Not sorry for the morning Emma and I shared, but sorry that what felt like love to me felt like violation to them. David's expression softens slightly. Dad, I know you mean well. This is exactly what Sarah and I have been talking about. Your judgment isn't what it used to be. You're making decisions without thinking about consequences. What consequences? She learned to fish. She had fun. She felt loved. She could have gotten hurt. She could have fallen in the water, been stung by a bee, gotten lost, any number of things, and we wouldn't have known where to find her. Safety concerns, risk management, the careful calculation of everything that could go wrong, with no consideration of everything that could go right. I kept her safe, David, just like I kept you safe. That was different. How was it different? He struggles for an answer, then settles on the only one that matters to him. Because she's not your responsibility, she's ours. Responsibility, there's that word again, the word that turns love into obligation, joy into burden, connection into liability. I drive home in silence, the empty cooler and unused fishing rod in my back seat serving as reminders of a morning that felt like healing but apparently represented illness. That evening, I call Tom Bradley at his home number. Tom, it's Robert Patterson. I'm sorry to bother you at home, but I've been thinking about our conversation, about my will. Of course. What can I do for you? I want to make some changes, big changes. Can we meet Monday morning? Absolutely. Robert, are you okay? I sound like a man who's finally understanding what his life is worth, and what it isn't. Monday morning, Tom and I spend 3 hours restructuring my entire estate plan. The changes are subtle but profound. David will inherit the house, but only if he can provide documentation that he provided meaningful care for me in my final years. Not just visits or phone calls, but actual care, time, attention, love. If he can't provide that documentation, the house goes to the Alzheimer's Association. The money I've been saving for Emma's college education, the $85,000 I plan to leave for David to manage, goes directly into a trust that Emma will inherit at age 18. David will have no access to it, no control over it. Emma will get a letter on her 18th birthday explaining that her grandfather wanted to make sure she never had to depend on anyone else for her education. My retirement accounts, $340,000, will go to Sunset Manor, the assisted living facility Tom mentioned, to create a fund for residents whose families can't or won't pay for their care. People like me, abandoned by children who see them as burdens. Most importantly, I dictate a letter to be read at my will reading. A letter explaining exactly why I made these decisions. A letter that will make it clear to David and Sarah that I understood exactly how they saw me, and that I made my choices accordingly. The changes feel both devastating and liberating. For the first time since Margaret died, I feel like I have control over something. For the first time since David rejected me, I feel like my choices matter. That evening, I don't call David to apologize for taking Emma fishing. I don't call to explain or plead or beg for understanding. Instead, I start making plans for my own life. Plans that don't depend on David's approval, or Sarah's permission, or anyone else's idea of what's best for me. I am 67 years old. I am lonely, but I am not helpless. I am grieving, but I am not incompetent. And I'm finally ready to stop letting other people decide what my life is worth. The Monday after my visit with Tom Bradley, I do something I haven't done in 30 years. I make decisions about my life without consulting anyone else. First, I call Sunset Manor, the assisted living facility that David and Sarah researched for me. But instead of letting them research on my behalf, I make my own appointment. For a tour. If I'm going to live somewhere other than the home I shared with Margaret for 35 years, I want to see it for myself, make my own judgment about whether it's a place I could be happy. The woman who answers the phone, Linda her name is, has a warm voice that immediately puts me at ease. Mr. Patterson, I'd be delighted to show you around. Would Thursday at 10 work for you? I'll make sure our activities director is available too, so you can get a sense of what daily life is like here. Activities director, daily life. She's talking about living, not just existing. Thursday morning, I drive to Sunset Manor with low expectations and high anxiety. I've been imagining a sterile, hospital-like environment where sad old people sit in wheelchairs staring at television screens, waiting to die. What I find instead changes everything. Sunset Manor is beautiful. The building is modern but warm, with large windows that let in natural light and comfortable seating areas that look more like someone's living room than institutional furniture. There are plants everywhere, real plants, thriving and green, tended by residents who clearly take pride in their care. Linda meets me at the front desk with a genuine smile and a firm handshake. She's about 50, with gray hair and laugh lines around her eyes, and when she asks how I'm doing, she actually listens to the answer. "Let me show you around," she says, "but first, let me introduce you to Frank. He's one of our residents who specifically asked to meet you when he heard you were coming for a tour." Frank Mitchell is 74 years old, with white hair and bright blue eyes, and the kind of energy that immediately draws you in. He's sitting in the lobby reading a newspaper, and when Linda introduces us, he stands up and shakes my hand like he's genuinely pleased to meet me. "Robert, Linda told me you're considering joining our little community here. What brings you to us?" It's a simple question, but the way he asks it, with interest rather than pity, with curiosity rather than judgment, makes me want to answer honestly. "My wife passed away 6 months ago," I tell him. "My son thinks I need supervised care. I'm trying to figure out what that means." Frank nods. "Ah, the son knows what's best for dad syndrome. I'm familiar with that one. Let me guess. He's got your whole future mapped out for you, and none of it involves asking what you actually want." The accuracy of his assessment is startling. "How did you know?" "Because that's how I ended up here 3 years ago. My daughter Jennifer decided I couldn't live alone anymore after I fell off a ladder trying to clean my gutters. Never mind that I'd been climbing ladders for 50 years. Never mind that the fall was minor. Suddenly I was a safety hazard who needed constant supervision." He gestures around the lobby. "So she researched places like this, made appointments, toured facilities, chose what she thought was best for me. Very thoughtful, very thorough, very certain that she knew what I needed better than I did." "And how do you like it here?" Frank grins. "Best decision I ever made. Amazing how much they want to visit now that they don't have to take care of me." He explains that he initially resisted the idea of assisted living, saw it as giving up, as admitting defeat. But once he actually moved here, everything changed. "I have friends here, Robert, real friends. People who understand what it's like to have adult children who treat you like a problem to be solved. We play cards together, share meals, take trips to museums and theaters. I'm more social now than I was in my own house, where I spent most of my time alone wondering when Jennifer was going to call." Linda takes me on a tour of the facility, and I'm amazed by what I see. There are art studios where residents paint and sculpt, a woodworking shop that looks better equipped than most professional workshops, a library with comfortable reading chairs and regular book club meetings. The dining room serves restaurant-quality food, and residents eat together at tables for 4 or 6, chatting and laughing like old friends. Many of our residents tell us they wish they'd made the decision to move here themselves, rather than having it made for them, Linda explains. There's a big difference between choosing to live in community and being forced into institutional care. The apartments are spacious and bright, with full kitchens and private balconies. Residents can bring their own furniture, their own artwork, their own memories. These aren't hospital rooms, they're homes. The waiting list is about 6 months, Linda tells me as we return to the lobby. But if you're serious about considering us, I'd be happy to put you on the list. No obligation, just so you have the option. That afternoon, I call my old friend Joe Martinez, whom I haven't talked to since Margaret's funeral. Joe and I worked construction together for 15 years before he retired and moved to Florida. He and his wife Rita were among our closest friends before distance and busyness caused us to drift apart. Robert, how are you holding up, buddy? Joe's voice is warm and familiar, and hearing it makes me realize how much I've missed adult conversation with someone who actually likes me. We talk for an hour, catching up on health and family and mutual friends. Joe tells me about his woodworking hobby, the volunteer work he does building wheelchair ramps for disabled veterans, the fishing trips he takes with a group of retired guys who meet at a local diner every Wednesday morning. You know what you need, Robert? You need to start living again instead of just surviving. Margaret wouldn't want you sitting in that empty house, feeling sorry for yourself. He's right, of course. Margaret always said that life was for living, not for enduring. There's a community center near you that offers woodworking classes, Joe continues. I looked it up while we were talking. Classes are on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Why don't you check it out? Tuesday evening, I find myself in a workshop filled with people my own age, learning to use tools I haven't touched since David outgrew the treehouse I built him 30 years ago. The instructor, a retired carpenter named Bill, is patient and encouraging. My fellow students are friendly and welcoming. For the first time in months, I feel useful, competent, engaged with something that matters. By the end of the month, I'm attending woodworking classes twice a week, volunteering at the public library on Saturday mornings, reading to children, and seriously considering putting my name on the waiting list at Sunset Manor. Emma calls me every few days, always whispering, always careful not to let her parents know she's talking to me. I tell her about the children I read to at the library, about the birdhouse I'm building in woodworking class, about the friends I'm making. You sound happy, Grandpa, she says during one of our conversations. Happy. When was the last time someone described me as happy? When was the last time I felt that way? I think I am, sweetheart. I think I'm finally figuring out how to be happy again. Mommy says you're having problems with your thinking, Emma says carefully, but you sound the same to me. Problems with my thinking. David and Sarah are still building their case for my incompetence, still preparing to take control of my life and my decisions. But for the first time since Margaret died, I don't feel like I need their permission to live my life. I don't feel like I need their approval to make choices about my future. I feel like myself again, not the bird. And they want me to believe I am, but the man I used to be, capable, independent, worthy of respect. The man Margaret fell in love with. The man who raised a son and built a life, and deserves better than to be warehoused by children who see him as an inconvenience. Thursday evening, I call Linda at Sunset Manor. I'd like to put my name on your waiting list, I tell her. Wonderful. I'll send you the paperwork. Are you making this decision for yourself, Robert, or is this something your family is pushing for? It's a good question. An important question. I'm making it for myself, I say, and realize it's the first completely true thing I've said about my future in months. For myself. What a revolutionary concept. What a gift I never thought I'd give myself again. 6 months later, I wake up in my own apartment at Sunset Manor to the sound of Frank knocking on my door. Robert, emergency phone call at the front desk, something about the hospital. My heart stops for a moment. Emma? Has something happened to Emma? But Linda's voice is calm when she hands me the phone. Mr. Patterson? This is St. Mary's Hospital. We have your son David here. He's listed you as his emergency contact. He's asking for you. The drive to the hospital takes 22 minutes, the same amount of time it used to take me to drive to David's house back when I lived in the house he wanted to sell out from under me, but everything else has changed. I'm not the broken, desperate man who begged his son for a place to stay 8 months ago. I'm not the burden who had to listen to his family plan his disposal through a kitchen window. I'm not the grandfather who had to sneak around to spend time with his own granddaughter. I'm a man who chose his own life, his own home, his own future. A man who reads to children at the library every Saturday morning, who builds birdhouses in woodworking class, who play poker with friends every Thursday night. A man who matters. The difference changes everything about how I walk into that hospital room. David looks small in the hospital bed, connected to monitors that beep softly in the quiet room. His face is pale, and when he sees me, something that might be relief flashes across his features. Dad, you came. Of course I came. You're my son. Sarah is sitting in the chair beside his bed, looking exhausted and scared. When she sees me, her expression cycles through surprise, guilt, and what might be gratitude. The doctor says it's not serious, she says quickly, like she's afraid I'll blame her for not taking better care of him. Just chest pains. Stress, probably. His blood pressure spiked, but they've got it under control now. David tries to sit up straighter when I approach his bed. Dad, I'm glad you're here. There are some things we need to discuss, about your affairs, about making sure everything is in order, just in case. Even now, even lying in a hospital bed, scared and vulnerable, his first concern isn't our relationship or his health or making peace with the damage we've done to each other. His first concern is my money. What kind of things, I ask, though I already know. Your will, power of attorney, healthcare directives. We've been meaning to sit down and go through all of that, make sure we understand your wishes. My wishes, as if my wishes have ever mattered to him. We need to talk about your living situation too, Sarah adds. I know you're at Sunset Manor now, but we want to make sure that's really the best place for you long term. We've been researching some other options. Other options? Even after I made my own choice, found my own happiness, built my own life, they're still trying to manage me like a problem to be solved. David, I say quietly, my affairs are already in order, just not the way you expected. Something in my tone makes him look at me more fully. What do you mean? I mean I've made my own decisions about my money, my property, my future. I've made my own choices about who deserves what when I'm gone. The room goes very quiet. Sarah and David exchange a look that's part confusion, part alarm. Dad, what are you talking about? I sit down in the visitor's chair and look at my son, really look at him, for the first time in months. He's 32 years old, successful, educated, living in the house I helped him buy. He has a beautiful daughter and a comfortable life and every advantage I never had. But he's also a man who sees his father as a burden, a man who would rather warehouse his parent than make room for him in his life, a man who measures love in spreadsheets and evaluates family relationships based on inconvenience. I'm talking about respect, David. I'm talking about the difference between being someone's father and being someone's responsibility. Dad, I don't understand. 8 months ago, when I called to ask if I could stay with you after your mother died, what was your first thought? He shifts uncomfortably in his hospital bed. We were concerned about your safety, your health. Your first thought was that I would be a burden. Your first conversation with Sarah was about how to get rid of me without feeling guilty about it. You never once considered that I might have something to offer, that I might still be worth loving. Sarah starts to protest, but I hold up my hand. I heard you, Sarah. Through your kitchen window. I heard you talking about power of attorney and memory care and selling my house. I heard you discussing my future like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. David's face flushes red. Dad, we were trying to help. You were trying to manage me. There's a difference. I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at the parking lot where people are coming and going, living their lives, making their own choices about what matters. Do you know what I've learned in the past 8 months, David? I've learned that I don't need your permission to live my life. I don't need your approval to make my own decisions. I don't need your management to be happy. I turn back to face them. I've made friends at Sunset Manor. Real friends who value my company because they want to spend time with me, not because they have to. I volunteer at the library. I take woodworking classes. I play cards with people who think I'm interesting and funny and worth knowing. Dad, I have a life, David, a real life, not the half-life you wanted to give me in some nursing home where I'd be safely out of your way. The monitors beep steadily in the silence that follows. I've also made some changes to my will, I continue. Changes that reflect how our family actually works, not how I used to pretend it worked. Sarah leans forward. What kind of changes? The kind that reward people who act like family and stop rewarding people who don't. David struggles to sit up straighter. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying I've learned to see myself through the eyes of people who value me, instead of through the eyes of people who see me as a burden. I volunteer at the library, and those children light up when I walk in the room. They run to me for hugs. They beg me to read their favorite stories. They draw me pictures to take home. My voice breaks a little, remembering. They think I'm wonderful, David. When was the last time you thought I was wonderful? The silence stretches on until David finally speaks. Dad, I do think you're wonderful. I've just been scared. When Mom died, when you started seeming so lost, I didn't know how to help. I didn't know what you needed. I needed you to ask me what I needed instead of deciding for me. I needed you to see me as your father instead of your responsibility. Sarah wipes her Yes. Robert, I think maybe we handled this all wrong. We were so focused on keeping you safe that we forgot to think about keeping you happy. It's the first honest thing she's said to me in months. Emma calls me, I tell them. She calls me from her bedroom when you're not listening, and she tells me about school and her friends and her dreams. Do you know what she asks me every time we talk? They shake their heads. She asks me when I'm coming home, not to visit, not for a holiday. Home. She thinks I was sent away because I did something wrong. David's face crumples. Oh God. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She's 8 years old, and she understands something you forgot. That families are supposed to take care of each other. Not by managing each other, not by making decisions for each other, but by loving each other. I walk back to David's bedside. I spent 32 years teaching you to be independent, David. Now I'm learning to be independent from you. The difference is, I learned how to be independent without cutting you out of my life. You tried to cut me out of yours. David reaches for my hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I let him take it. Dad, can we try again? Can we start over? I look at my son, seeing both the man he's become and the boy he used to be, the boy who ran to me with scraped knees, who trusted me to teach him to fish and ride a bike and be brave in a scary world. We can try, I say, but things will be different this time. Different how? This time, you'll have to earn your place in my life the same way I had to earn my place in yours. This time, love will flow both directions, or it won't flow at all. 3 months later, David and Sarah visit me at Sunset Manor every Sunday. Not because they have to, not because they feel guilty, but because they want to. David brings Emma, and we work on woodworking projects together in my apartment. Sarah helps me plant flowers in the small garden plot the facility assigned to me. Emma is learning to play chess from Frank, who has appointed himself her honorary grandfather. She fits into our little community like she was born to it, bringing light and laughter to people who had forgotten what it felt like to be important to a child. David still calls with questions about my health, my finances, my plans, but now the questions come from love, not from a need to control. Now he asks what I want instead of deciding what I need. Dad, he said to me last Sunday, I want you to know something. What's that? I'm proud of you. For making your own life. For finding your own happiness. I'm proud that you're my father. It's taken 67 years, 32 years of raising him, and 8 months of rebuilding myself. But I finally have something I didn't know I'd lost. A son who sees me as a person worth being proud of. Not a burden to be managed. Not a responsibility to be discharged. A father who deserves to be loved. And that, I'm learning, makes all the difference in the world.